And welcome everybody to the F3 edition of Freightonomics. I'm Zach Jecklin, head of Freight Market Intelligence with Tony Mulvey, senior analyst. And we have our special guest, Zach Jecklin, here today. And before we dive into things, though, we want to thank our sponsor, Tony.
Yep, we want to thank the TV stage sponsor, the Cox Group. So a WBE-certified asset-based turnkey logistics solutions company located through North America with 22 million square foot of distribution space and over 1,000 power units. Visit www.warehouseservices.com for more details.
Awesome stuff. So, Zach, introduce yourself. Tell us where you are from and all about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate it. Happy to be on the show here. Thanks for having me. Zach Jecklin, CIO at Echo Global Logistics. We're 3PL in the transportation management and brokerage space in Chicago, Illinois, just under 3,000 employees. I've been at the company for coming up on 17 years now, so I've gotten to see it go from about 100 people when I got there to about 3,000 today.
17 years in freight brokerage.
Yeah.
Like, when you started at Echo, what did you start out as?
I started first job right out of college.
Yeah.
I started as a financial analyst. So I spent 9 years working in the finance organization, and then transitioned from that to strategy for 4 or 5 years, and now coming up on my 3rd year as CIO.
My guy, financial analysis. That's where I was. I'm a finance guy too. So, before we get into things though, we are very appreciative of everybody here today at F3. The energy has been pretty robust.
Yeah, it's been strong.
Yeah.
It little rainy this morning,
Little
but
rainy.
I think it hasn't deterred the crowd from showing up.
Hasn't dampened the spirits. Craig Fuller and I also had our state of freight, and I want to get a little bit of your take on it. I know we got Doug coming in tomorrow, Doug Wagner, the CEO. Who is going to also have a little chat with Craig about some of these market conditions. But I'd like to get your just kind of high-level feel on what things are. You know, Craig has come out and been very vocal about saying the freight recession's over.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. I think, obviously, from a freight brokerage perspective, you're very much like ready for this to end. It's been a pretty strong downturn overall, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're ready for a tailwind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competitors in the space that I think are ready for a tailwind. When I think about where we're at today, it's been a long, bottom part of the market for longer than we've probably seen in the history of these cycles. At the same time, we're coming off what was the biggest peak we've ever seen in the history of our cycles. So I think it kind of makes sense that it took a little while longer for some of that capacity to come out of the marketplace and start to see rates return to more elevated dollar amounts. At Echo, we're ready to be flexible in any sort of market. So when the market flips, we're ready to take advantage of that. We'll be excited about it. At the same time, we feel like we know how to operate in any of these cycles and do our best to make sure that we're taking market share and growing profitability, even in these downturns.
Yeah, so what are some of the things that you, like, you don't have to reveal your secret sauce all the way, obviously. But what are some of the things that have been different this downturn for you guys that you've been able to navigate, maybe on a unique challenge to this freight market that you didn't see in some of the previous ones? Obviously, 17 years, you've seen a few.
Yeah, I think in general, most of the time you go through 1 or 2 bid cycles in a downturn. I think we've started to see now 2 or 3 bid cycles here. And so it comes back a lot to relationships. How are you managing the relationships with your largest shippers and with your largest carriers to make sure that you're providing exceptional service, but at the same time managing your costs? Because as a broker, we're operating off a spread in between those 2 rates. So I think that's been new for us. I think that when I look at what Echo has that's differentiated, it's not just fantastic technology. As the CIO, of course, I'm going to say we have fantastic technology, right, better than our peers. But at the same time, I think we have some of the best people in the industry with incredible amounts of history and experience in the space. And they know how to navigate these cycles. And when one is different than another, we do our best in those 2.
I think that's a good starting point for this conversation about AI. I think there was a question to Zach and Craig earlier today about it, and Craig kind of highlighted that it's still a relationship business. But talk from a CIO perspective of what's going on in the AI world. I mean, is it all hype? Are you seeing 2 different sides of the people are buying in, more people skeptical? Like, what are the thoughts around AI?
Yeah, it's not all hype. There's going to be a lot of value that comes from artificial intelligence. There already has been a lot of value that's come from artificial intelligence in the last 30 years. This isn't an incredibly new thing. I think generative AI and the use of these consumer-facing applications like OpenAI, that is relatively new, but AI has been used for a very long time. I think that the interesting part of the conversation is people are talking about AI in every single industry across every different level. So you have individuals talking about it and board members talking about it, and they all lump it together as AI. And I think that the thing you have to do is you have to separate it. You have to speak very clearly about use cases, because at Echo, what we're focused on is not rocket science. Like, there are some use cases when you're trying to use AI for self-driving trucks, or AI to cure cancer, or AI to assist in surgeries. That's rocket science. You have to invest billions of dollars in that,
right,
and it's life or death if you get it right or wrong. That's not what we're doing. We're automating some emails because we get millions of them. We're shaving 30 seconds off a task that we do 10,000 times a week. We're using open source technology. We're using things that are relatively inexpensive, and we're using things that are either off the shelf or we can build internally without using rocket science. And so there's one part of the conversation, which is you have to invest so much in order to leverage AI. What we're doing is we're leveraging it in what I would call a relatively inexpensive way, but focused on valuable use cases for our industry.
Now, you've talked about it from kind of an internal, inward-facing standpoint. Obviously, it makes your operation more efficient. Technology always does. But how does this translate into the value add to the customer side?
Yeah, I think there's two ways that we think about value add at Echo. One is, and this is probably the most important, what's the service level that we can give to a shipper or to a carrier? Because in the long run, that's what's going to matter most as a broker, that we're taking care of our customers or our carrier partners. And so first and foremost, there's a lot of ways that AI can cut through the noise to provide better service back to a shipper or carrier. Our people get, we probably get multiple millions of emails in and out of our platform on a weekly basis. There's a lot of noise in there. Some of those are very valuable, some of it's complete noise. And so the ability to use AI to categorize those emails, raise and flag the ones that need to be responded to right away, automatically give notifications back to a shipper or to a carrier when they need to know something. Those are use cases that provide better experiences for those constituents. And then at the same time, we're in a unique industry where on a truckload shipment, you might make a couple $100 a load. On an LTL, you're in the double digits.
Right.
We make money because we do 15,000 plus of those on a daily basis. So we might have 45,000 transactions in transit, at any given point in time. And then in this industry, in order for that to go well, you have hundreds of touch points across the life cycle of a load from quote to settlement, where you either need a person or you need a process. And so I think AI in our industry, across all those different processes, we can find the right spots to embed artificial intelligence to either make that completely automated in some cases, or provide a more streamlined, better workflow for our people. And so the end outcome of that is our sales and operations people get to spend more time building relationships with those shippers and carriers, or we can move more freight with the same number of people as we have today. Both are good things from a bottom line standpoint.
Yeah, I think my question is going to be more, what is the people element? Like, what's the buy-in? Has it been well received? I know a lot of times you can see AI kind of...
They took our jobs.
Yeah, exactly. and I don't think we're there yet, but I mean, has the buy-in been strong within Echo's organization?
The buy-in's been great. I think we've taken very much a crawl, walk, run approach. So we do not have the mindset that we want to use AI to automate 100% of everybody's job. That's silliness. We've seen some competitors in the space that have tried to automate everything. It hasn't played out to work, the way that they thought. So for us, it's about finding the right tasks and for the right use cases to throw AI at it, and then make sure even in those particular cases, even if we want to eventually automate a particular task, we're going to put a human in the loop for some period of time before we're ready to officially say go, because you might, if you get something wrong 1 out of 90 times, you might ruin a relationship that's been around for a long period of time. And we get that. And so you want to be safe and careful with the way that you're rolling these things out.
Yeah, I think it's that's the thing is, I've tried to automate. I said this on stage with Craig earlier. I've tried to automate my job. I'm an extremely lazy individual, but I've been working at automating my job since I started working out of college, and I have never gotten less busy. And I think that's the thing that's, I think it terrifies some people. Obviously, some of the unions, the port, the ILA strike that is still ongoing. They're terrified of the fact that they may not have a job tomorrow, whereas a lot of the evidence to the contrary is that technology only makes your job safer and easier. And my job did get easier when I automated the process. I just got something else to do that required a little bit more effort. Do you see the same thing happening at Echo?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes back to what's the most valuable added thing that our people can be doing, and that is interacting with shippers, solving problems, talking to carriers, building relationships. And the more that they can do that, and the less that they can be finding the needle in a haystack load that's going to be late, right, or dealing with carrier invoices that have a discrepancy, that's not all that value add. We need to do those things to make the process work, but we don't need our people doing that.
And that's not a job people really like to do. That's the people that are sitting over there saying, I don't really want to go to work today. It's not very challenging or fulfilling, right?
Right. And so I think in transportation and in brokerage, with as complex as what we do, there's a lot of other valuable added things for people to be doing. And I think folks are buying into that. They're buying into the technology. They're using it more in their personal lives, which I think is actually really helpful. They see the value that they're getting in the personal things that they use the tech for. And so they're becoming much more comfortable with the concept of that being used in the business sense.
Do you see people pushing for continued advancements in the AI with that, where you mentioned they use it in their personal lives? Do you see them bringing that in and getting on you to, hey, we need something that makes our lives easier?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've had more suggestions around technology advancement through AI by our business than I've had in any other type of technology around our TMS, because I think of how much these folks are using it in their day-to-day lives. The hard part is making sure that they know how to safely use it and they're not doing things and giving away something that they shouldn't from a proprietary standpoint. So we do a lot of training, a lot of education, but we don't stop them from doing things on their own if they have that ambition.
So you said that AI is kind of the top of mind. It's like the hottest tech type thing to talk about. Is there another maybe technology or any other thing that people haven't noticed that aren't talking about it as much as AI? Or you said it was the number one.
I still think it's the number one.
Yeah.
I think the use case at Echo, we're using AI in probably 8 or 9 different areas within Echo right now.
Wow.
And some are in pilot form, some are kind of fully released and live. And so we feel like we're in a great spot there. We weren't probably the first to market, but we were well ahead of the curve, I think, in most cases, specific to our industry especially. And the thing that we've focused on more than any other area, because we see the most value in it, is just how much we can get out of email. Mm-hmm. And when I think about email, I didn't know this, but we did some surveys, we looked at some data. Our people spend more than 30% of their time in email. That's almost more than they spend in our TMS that we've built proprietarily.
But that's right, though. That's because the TMS is technology that's automated, that's made the process streamlined.
Exactly. And so the thing we're most excited about is not about eliminating a TMS or eliminating an email. It's thinking about how do we integrate the two seamlessly, like we do with EDI or API with a shipper or carrier. Just integrate email with the TMS so that you can do either two things. You can either bring the TMS into your inbox, which is helpful. Think about how many emails our people get that say, what's the status of this load? If we've already hit an API to bring in that status, just put it right there in the inbox rather than make them go to the TMS to gather that information or automate it. And then there's the other side, which is the shipper or carrier is telling us something about a load that we need to go enter into the TMS. Bring that information directly in via an API. So when we think about this kind of seamless integration between email and the TMS, there might be 15, 20, 25 use cases that pop when you watch somebody multitask across all these systems. And so I think that's where we're most excited. We're live with 3, but there's a long list of value add to go that I'm pumped about.
I think that was where I was going to go. Is like in the future, what excites you the most about AI as a whole, and especially in Echo's use cases? I know you mentioned there's a bunch of possibilities out there. Kind of what is the most exciting short term and maybe in the longer term as well?
And I need to borrow your AI for my email. So
we haven't used open source yet, but
Okay.
you'll be the first we call if we do. What am I most excited about? I think that the more modern the technologies get and the more there's, everything you're building is API driven. They're all microservices. And so the ability to tap into those microservices or APIs using extracted data from something that historically has been unstructured and thus just, a long time ago was untouchable when it was unstructured. Now unstructured is our friend. Like, it's not a big deal. You can get an unstructured email, unstructured PDF, unstructured Excel doc, and the AI can figure out the intent or what you're supposed to be using that for. And so then the ability to extract the relevant information and hit these APIs from your modern technology stack, that's going to unlock so many things that haven't been able to be unlocked in the past. The other thing that I'm excited about, and this is kind of early stage thinking, but when you watch a broker operate, which I'm sure you all have, they are multitasking in a million systems.
30 screens.
30 screens.
80 tabs on each one.
Different systems, multiple tabs, G-chatting, and it's wild across the board. And so that is all generating data. But the ability to comprehend that data when someone's doing something for 6 seconds, 9 seconds, 4 seconds, it's not something a human can kind of comprehend. Our ability to use AI to look at that and actually think about how we're building the TMS to try to streamline some of that complexity, that is something that AI is really good of, making sense of those millions and millions of rows of, 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there, to try to understand how do our best sales reps or operators do it, and how do some of the ones that are struggling doing it to bring everybody up.
Have you been able to quantify any of those early initiatives?
Yeah, there's definitely some qualification around how we're quoting via email. There's some qualifications around how we're building orders via email. These are things that people were doing. So building orders, right? So that one, we're going to get a rate con in from a carrier. It's going to have all the relevant information in it. We used to then copy an order or build an order from scratch in the TMS. Now those things are building automatically directly from the email. That's saving time. Our people have become more efficient. They're able to do more value-added things. The quote, I think, is another interesting case that's a little bit different because the quotes, it's more around how fast are you reacting,
Right.
more than anything. Because if you can get a quote back to a shipper in a minute or 5 minutes, that's far better than 2 hours. That load's already probably won because you all know a lot of cases in these smaller shippers, they blast 20 brokers with the same email. So it's a little bit of who can respond first.
I think that's interesting, and I think when you look at it, we've talked about like the easy, I don't want to say easy wins, but those quick wins, just automating processes. I mean, what about the flip side? I mean, are there areas where you've looked at it and said, hey, people market AI to help solve a problem, and in reality, you look at it from the high level, and you're like, this may be not the right place to use it at this exact moment.
Yeah, it's changing drastically. So my answer this year might be different than my answer next year, by the way. But I look at I get pitched all the time for voice-enabled robots to do sales over the phone. Like pure sales. I'm going to call up prospective shippers and get them to move freight with Echo. I don't see that as a viable use case in today's world. It is hard to get someone on the phone these days. And so if and when you do get a prospect on the phone, that's a very valuable moment to throw a human being at that and not a bot that's harder to control. So I see that as like ahead of the skis, right? But there are definitely some cases of voice that make perfect sense. If someone's calling in and they just want to get an update on a claim, we can give them that update and have a human in the background, if they want to talk to somebody further. So again, it comes back to the use case, but these pitches around sales through a robot over the phone, still some time before that's a thing.
I love that you're like, one of the ways that I've explained to a lot of people I talk to about AI is, and I love that your approach is exactly the right way, is take these small bites first. The complexity of everybody's actions throughout the day. We think that going to decide to eat at Wendy's or something like that requires minimal mental effort on our part. But to a machine or a computer program, there's a lot of complexity that goes into that decision that we've kind of like gotten through. Are there any like sort of complicated processes that you think AI will get to quicker, like in terms of the technology to be able to tackle? And the sales robot's obviously an example of one that didn't quite make the short list, but maybe next year it is. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think a big one that I'm excited about, we're not using today, but plan on in the future, is the coaching that you can get from AI. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about your sales managers that might manage 15 sales reps, and those 15 sales reps are on the phone, mm-hmm. All day long, right? In the past, you might be leaning next to someone, kind of listening for talking points, and then being able to provide a coaching moment after the fact. In tomorrow's day and age, that call will be recorded, it will be transcribed, AI will have already suggested the things that could have been done different based on past experiences at Echo that led to a lot more freight. And so I think for managers to be able to get that level of information to help make people better, not replace them, make them better, that is something that's very challenging to do with a human being, and just requires a lot of listening that's it's difficult. And in the future, it's going to be, I think, more normal.
I think that's a great point, because I think it takes the time element from a manager's perspective out of it, from having to listen into things. If they can read something that takes 30 seconds, it's a 30-second snippet of, hey, here's the area that's flagged. It gives them time back to continue that training overall. I mean, when you look at it from 30,000 feet up, where are we in a year when it comes to AI? I know it's impossible to answer.
Predict the future.
Yeah.
We're holding you to it.
I mean, the one thing I'm confident in is we'll be further along than we probably thought we will be today. Because I would have told you a year ago, we wouldn't be at this point, today. So this is moving incredibly fast. The technologies are advancing tenfold in the period of 12 months, faster than I've seen technology advance historically. So predicting where it's going to be, very, very challenging. I just know you have to be ready for it. You have to take those small bites. To be honest, you don't want to invest heavily in something that's super proprietary, because it might be mainstream 6 months from now. And so that's kind of the view we've taken is, let's use as much open source, let's use as much off the shelf as we can, and just point it at the best use cases. Like, use our own proprietary strategic thinking to point it at a good use case, to train it with the right proprietary data, but not reinvent the technology, because it's going to change 12 months from now.
Do you think that this market has helped kind of like sharpen the tool for the use case on AI, because efficiency is such a requirement for operating in the space after a long downturn?
I think it's pushing people to think about this more, probably.
Yeah.
At Echo, I think we were down this path regardless, but in a lot of cases, I think for brokerages or for 3PLs in the space, they're looking at all opportunities right now to try to create some amount of streamlined efficiency within their orgs, and this is certainly one of those spots.
If you had to give one piece of advice for, say, obviously they're competitors, but smaller players in the space around AI and AI adoption, what would that be? If you were looking,
Do I have to?
No, you don't have to. No secret sauce.
No.
No, I think, again, I'd go back. Don't overcomplicate this. Don't try to reinvent the technology. Use the technology that's out there, because it already exists.
Yeah, that's great. So we're running up on time here, but any final thoughts or anything you want to say? Shout out to your team.
I guess let me ask, if we can, what's their favorite thing that you use AI for in your personal life?
Oh my God, summarizing my own thoughts. So
I use it for generating like ideas around like analyzing data. Learning constantly, so it's trying to automate some of the processes.
Yeah, I also use it to kind of read stuff for me, to summarize it and spit back the most relevant information. Like, a lot of times it's a more objective source of truth there.
I will say, one of the best areas I've seen, interview questions,
Yep.
coming up with questions, giving things like that for shows like this.
None of those used today, though.
No.
All right, Zach. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Shout out
thank
to your
you.
team.
Shout out to all the team members at Echo back at home and all the ones here watching.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Y'all have a great rest of your conference.